Good evening, friends. Tonight I want to share a simple but powerful truth. Your dreams are only as strong as the deadlines you give them. A vision without a date is like a ship without a destination. It drifts. Let's explore how setting deadlines transforms vague hopes into inevitable victories. A dream is the spark that lights your imagination, but without action it remains nothing more than a pleasant thought. Too many people spend years thinking about what they would like to do, the life they hope to build, or the change they wish to see, yet they never move beyond the daydream. A dream without action is only a wish, and wishes drift away like smoke. The difference between someone who quietly longs for a better future and someone who lives it lies in a single decision, the decision to move from imagining to doing. When you simply dream, the idea can feel safe and exciting. It's a warm place to visit in your mind. You can picture the new career, the healthy body, the successful business, or the skill you want to master. But a vision in your head doesn't build the bridge from where you are to where you want to be. Time passes whether you act or not, and if you only dream, the years will slip by while the goal stays frozen in your imagination. Action is the spark that wakes the dream and pulls it into the real world. Action gives shape to ideas. The moment you take a single step, writing down your plan, enrolling in a class, making a phone call, you transform a thought into something tangible. That one step proves to yourself that the dream isn't just fantasy, it's a project you can build piece by piece. Without that first step, even the greatest vision stays weightless. The world only responds to what you actually do, not what you merely hope for. It's easy to confuse daydreaming with progress because thinking about the dream feels good. You can spend hours visualizing success and feel a temporary rush of motivation. But if that energy isn't converted into a concrete task, it fades, leaving nothing behind. Action, on the other hand, creates momentum. Each completed task builds confidence and invites the next. Momentum is what carries you through days when motivation is low. Without action, momentum never begins. Many people hesitate because they believe they must have the perfect plan before they start. They wait for the right moment, more resources, or flawless conditions. But perfect conditions rarely arrive. Clarity grows as you move. Each step reveals the next. Action teaches you what works and what doesn't. Waiting teaches you only how to wait longer. Taking action also signals commitment. It tells your mind and everyone around you that you are serious. It changes how you see yourself. You stop being someone who only dreams and become someone who builds. That identity shift is powerful. When you see yourself as a builder of your own life, you approach each day differently. You no longer ask whether your dream is possible, you ask what you can do today to bring it closer. Even small actions matter. 5 minutes of focused effort beats hours of wishing. A single phone call, a paragraph written, a short workout, all these moves turn a fragile idea into something with weight. Consistent small actions compound over time, eventually producing results that look like sudden success to outsiders, though you know they were built slowly and deliberately. Ultimately, dreams without action fade. They become regrets, whispered late at night, or stories about what might have been. Action keeps a dream alive. It is the heartbeat of every achievement, the bridge between imagination and reality. The sooner you act, the sooner your dream stops being a wish and starts becoming a life you can touch, feel, and share. A clear deadline does something remarkable to the human mind. It flips a switch from idle contemplation to focused action. Think about how you behave when a task has no specific end date. You may feel a sense of possibility, even excitement, but the urgency is missing. Days pass, you tinker with ideas, and progress is slow because nothing insists you move faster. Now imagine that same task with a firm date circled on the calendar. Instantly your perspective changes. Each day counts. Every hour matters. The energy you once spread thin suddenly concentrates on what truly needs to be done. This urgency is not about panic or stress, it's about purpose. A deadline provides a natural boundary that shapes your choices. When time feels abundant, we allow distractions to steal our attention. We tell ourselves we'll start tomorrow or next week or when the mood is right. But when the clock is ticking, hesitation loses its charm. The mind begins to prioritize with precision. You start trimming the unnecessary, clearing clutter, and focusing on the essential steps that will move you closer to your goal. Consider how students approach an assignment. If given an open-ended project with no due date, many will let it drift, returning to it only when inspiration strikes. But give them a firm deadline, say next Friday at noon, and watch their creativity sharpen. The same principle applies to every dream. Whether you're writing a book, starting a business, or learning a skill, a deadline injects momentum. It transforms lofty ambition into a living plan that demands your attention right now. There's also a psychological spark in knowing the finish line exists. Our brains thrive on targets. We are wired to respond to challenges with a set time frame. Deadlines engage our competitive spirit, even if the competition is with ourselves. That subtle pressure wakes up hidden reserves of energy and focus. You may notice yourself working later, thinking faster, and making decisions with greater clarity. Far from being a burden, this heightened state can be exhilarating. It draws out strengths you might never discover in a relaxed, endless timeline. Moreover, urgency doesn't just push you to start, it pushes you to refine. With a deadline, you can't afford endless revision or second guessing. You're compelled to act, review, and improve in a disciplined rhythm. This rhythm builds habits that last long after the project ends. The habit of daily progress, of respecting time, becomes part of who you are. In this way, a single deadline can change more than one project. It can reshape your character. Think about the world's great achievements, inventions, discoveries, works of art. Behind nearly all of them stood a moment when someone decided, this must be finished by this date. Deadlines may sound rigid, but they are the framework on which freedom is built. They free you from endless wandering and bring your dream into the realm of reality. Without that sense of urgency, ideas remain airy possibilities. With it, they become tangible results. So when you choose a dream worth chasing, don't just define what success looks like. Decide when it will happen. Set the date. Let the countdown begin. The urgency it creates will not only move you forward, it will reveal the focus, discipline, and creative power that were waiting within you all along. Clarity is the silent engine behind every extraordinary achievement. When a dream first enters your mind, it often appears as a hazy picture, beautiful but undefined, like a foggy landscape at dawn. You know there's something powerful there, but you can't quite make out the details. Without clarity, you may feel inspired for a while, but directionless. It's like holding a treasure map with no markings. This is where a deadline changes everything. A clear target gives shape to the vision, stripping away the mist and turning an abstract idea into a concrete mission. When you commit to a specific date, you force your mind to define what success will look like and when it will happen. Instead of simply dreaming of being healthier, you decide that by a particular day you will be able to run a 10-kilometer race, or lose a set amount of weight, or complete a certain number of workouts. The moment you set that date, you begin to reverse engineer the path. You start breaking down the months, the weeks, and the days into manageable steps. Suddenly, each action you take in the present has a clear connection to the outcome in the future. This clarity fuels momentum because it transforms each day into a meaningful segment of your larger plan. Rather than drifting from one task to another or waiting for the perfect wave of motivation, you wake up knowing exactly what needs to be done and by when. That sense of purpose is energizing. It sharpens your decisions and filters out distractions. When you have a well-defined deadline, it becomes easier to say no to activities that don't serve your goal, because you can see precisely how they steal time from the bigger picture. Clarity doesn't just guide your steps, it protects your focus. Consider how architects design a building. They don't simply say, let's build something magnificent. They create blueprints, establish a timeline for each stage, and schedule inspections to measure progress. Without those specifics, even the most talented crew would waste effort, unsure of where to begin or how to proceed. Your life's dreams deserve the same precision. A deadline acts as your personal blueprint, ensuring that every action you take aligns with the finished structure you envision. Moreover, clarity through deadlines trains your mind to think strategically. When you know the exact day your dream should materialize, you naturally anticipate obstacles and prepare solutions in advance. If you plan to launch a business by the end of the year, you start identifying potential financial challenges, gathering resources, and arranging support systems long before they become crises. You're not reacting, you're proactively steering the ship. This forward thinking keeps your momentum steady even when setbacks occur. It's important to realize that clarity is not about rigidity. Setting a deadline doesn't mean you can't adjust the plan as you learn and grow. In fact, the clearer your timeline, the more effectively you can make intelligent adjustments. If you find that a particular strategy isn't working, your well-defined schedule allows you to pivot quickly without losing sight of the ultimate goal. Instead of feeling lost, you simply recalibrate and continue forward. Ultimately, clarity born from a deadline gives you the gift of measurable progress. Each day becomes a checkpoint, each week a marker of how far you've come. That steady awareness creates confidence. You no longer wonder whether your dream is possible. You can see it unfolding step by step. The power of this process is transformative. When you set a deadline and bring your dream into sharp focus, you ignite an unstoppable momentum. The once distant horizon becomes a clear path beneath your feet, and the energy of that clarity carries you all the way to the finish line. Discipline is the quiet architect of every achievement, and nowhere is its power more evident than when a deadline is in play. Motivation can be thrilling, like a sudden gust of wind that pushes a sailboat forward, but gusts fade. The ocean of life is wide and unpredictable, and if you depend only on the wind of inspiration, you drift. Discipline is the engine beneath the surface, steady and relentless. It's the part of you that keeps rowing when the breeze disappears. When you commit to a deadline, you give discipline a framework to thrive. Consider what happens when you decide that a dream must be reached by a certain date. The calendar becomes a silent coach, reminding you daily that every action counts. Discipline steps in to convert that reminder into routine. You no longer wait for the perfect mood or the surge of energy that motivation brings. Instead, you rise at the set hour, begin the planned task, and follow through because the clock does not bargain. This quiet repetition, day after day, builds a bridge from intention to result. Motivation often whispers promises of excitement, grand visions of success, flashes of inspiration that feel unstoppable. But those promises are temporary sparks. They can ignite the start of a journey, but they cannot sustain the fire. Discipline, on the other hand, is the steady flame. It keeps burning even when conditions grow cold, when obstacles appear, when doubts whisper that the goal is too far away. A deadline reinforces that flame. It turns an abstract dream into a series of concrete steps, and discipline is the force that moves you through those steps, no matter how you feel. Think of an artist creating a large mural. Inspiration may start the first strokes, but finishing demands hours of careful detail, even on days when fatigue sets in. If the artist has promised to unveil the piece by a particular date, discipline becomes the guiding hand. There will be mornings when the artist does not feel inspired, when the mind is heavy and the colors seem dull. Yet the work continues, stroke by stroke, because the deadline is approaching. That commitment transforms discipline from an optional virtue into an essential habit. Deadlines also protect you from the endless lure of perfectionism. Without a set endpoint, it is easy to tinker forever, to wait until conditions feel ideal, to postpone progress in the name of improvement. But when a finish line is fixed in time, discipline teaches you to balance quality with completion. You learn to make decisions, to act, to move forward even when every detail is not flawless. In this way, a deadline is not a restriction but a release. It frees you from hesitation and gives discipline a clear path. Ultimately, discipline is the companion that keeps your dream alive through the long, uneventful stretches of effort that no one else sees. The world applauds results, but discipline thrives in the quiet hours when no applause is heard. By linking your dream to a specific date, you harness discipline's full strength. You create a daily rhythm that does not depend on emotion, and you prove to yourself that consistent action, small, deliberate, and unwavering, outlast any fleeting burst of motivation. Progress is one of the most powerful motivators we have, but it can feel slippery when we leave it undefined. Without a timeline, our goals drift in a kind of fog. We might work hard for days or even weeks, yet wonder if we are moving forward or simply spinning our wheels. That's why measurable progress matters so much. When you set a clear deadline, you create a framework that allows you to see movement in real time. It's like marking a trail through the forest. Each step is visible, and you know exactly how far you've come and how far you still need to go. Consider the difference between saying, "I'll write a book someday," and saying, "I'll complete the first draft by September 30th. The first statement is a hope. The second is a plan. With that deadline in place, you can break the larger goal into smaller, measurable pieces. How many chapters per month? How many pages per week? How many words per day? Each checkpoint becomes a small victory. You can measure the distance between where you began and where you stand now, and that tangible evidence of progress fuels you to keep going. This measurable approach does something remarkable to your mindset. It turns the invisible into the visible. You can look at your calendar and say, I've hit 70% of my milestones, or I'm 3 days ahead of schedule. That data tells the truth. It removes guesswork and replaces it with clarity. And clarity is power. It gives you the confidence to push forward and the insight to adjust when something isn't working. If a plan falls behind, you'll see it early enough to change your strategy, instead of realizing too late that you're off course. The psychology behind measurable progress is just as important as the practical side. Each time you check a task off your list, your brain receives a small surge of satisfaction. This isn't just a pleasant feeling, it's a reinforcement loop. Your mind associates that sense of achievement with the work you're doing, so you're naturally drawn to continue. Over time, those small wins compound into unstoppable momentum. What once felt like a mountain begins to feel like a series of manageable steps, because you have proof every day that you are indeed climbing. Deadlines give you a natural structure for review and reflection. Instead of waiting until the very end to evaluate your success, you can measure progress at regular intervals. Are you halfway to the finish line by the halfway point in time? Are your daily actions aligned with the outcome you envisioned? These check-ins prevent stagnation. They allow you to fine-tune your approach, making each day more efficient than the last. In this way, measurable progress transforms not only the pace of your work, but also the quality of your decisions. Without this structure, even the most inspired dream can lose momentum. Days blur together, effort piles up without a clear sense of direction. You might be working hard, but without measurable benchmarks, you have no proof of growth, and without proof, motivation can fade. A deadline solves this problem. It sets a finish line and, just as importantly, a series of mile markers along the way. You know exactly when to celebrate small achievements and when to course correct. This is why measurable progress isn't merely a nice addition to your goals, it's essential. It turns lofty intentions into a concrete journey. It tells you the truth about where you stand and provides the encouragement to keep moving. When you attach a deadline to your dream, you give yourself the gift of visible progress. And that visibility becomes the fuel that carries you all the way to completion. Pressure often carries a reputation for being negative, something to avoid or escape. Yet when you're pursuing a meaningful dream, the right kind of pressure can be one of the most powerful forces for personal growth. A deadline adds exactly that kind of constructive pressure. It takes an idea floating in the clouds and pulls it down to earth, giving it weight and urgency. Suddenly, what once felt optional now demands action. The moment you set a date, your mind starts reorganizing itself around that commitment. It's not a random thought anymore, it's a promise, and promises shape behavior. This healthy pressure pushes you to look at your time differently. Days are no longer an endless supply of some days. You start asking sharper questions. What steps must I take today to be ready tomorrow? Which tasks matter most? Which distractions can no longer steal my energy? These questions forge discipline. They force you to cut through the noise and focus on what truly moves you closer to your goal. Without that subtle tension of a ticking clock, it's easy to drift, to let small obstacles or comfort temptations pull you off course. The growth begins when you meet resistance. Maybe you hit a setback, run into self-doubt, or discover a skill you still need to learn. A deadline keeps you from walking away. Instead of quitting, you adapt. You find new strategies, learn new techniques, or simply build the endurance to keep going. This process develops resilience. Each time you stretch to meet a time-bound target, you prove to yourself that you can handle more than you thought. The pressure becomes a teacher, revealing strengths you didn't know you possessed. There's also a hidden psychological benefit. When you're working toward a fixed date, you start to trust your own word. You say you'll finish and then you follow through. Over time, this builds self-respect. You no longer rely on motivation alone because you have evidence that you can honor commitments, even when it's hard. That confidence carries into other areas of life. Relationships, career decisions, personal habits. The growth isn't just about the dream itself, it's about who you become by striving for it. Some worry that pressure kills creativity, but in truth, it can refine it. A deadline sharpens the mind. With limited time, you think faster, make clearer choices, and find inventive solutions. Ideas you might have overlooked suddenly rise to the surface because you're fully engaged. It's like a musician improvising during a live performance. The constraints create the magic. You learn to trust your instincts and to work with what you have instead of waiting for perfect conditions. Ultimately, the pressure of a deadline transforms the entire journey. It keeps you awake to possibility and forces growth at every stage, mental, emotional, and even physical. You build habits of consistency. You discover that you can endure discomfort and still move forward. You learn that the path to any worthwhile dream isn't smooth, but it's worth it. And when you finally cross that finish line, the victory feels deeper because you know the effort it required. The deadline wasn't a barrier, it was the very force that helped you evolve into someone capable of living the dream. Deadlines turn fear into focus because they force us to confront the very thing that often keeps us stuck: uncertainty. When a dream is left open-ended, it feels safe to talk about it someday. We can imagine the perfect conditions, the ideal mood, or the magical moment when everything will fall into place. But that vague comfort is where fear quietly grows. We start to wonder if we're good enough, if the timing is right, if we should wait until we feel more confident. And while we wait, the dream drifts further away. A deadline shatters that illusion. By choosing a specific date, we tell ourselves and the world, this will happen, ready or not. Suddenly, the fog of uncertainty begins to lift, and the mind shifts from anxious speculation to practical preparation. Fear thrives on endless options. It whispers that you can always start tomorrow, and if tomorrow is infinite, you never need to begin. A deadline takes tomorrow off the table. It reduces 1,000 possible starts into one decisive day. That narrowing of choices doesn't just create urgency, it breeds clarity. Instead of thinking about every possible obstacle, you begin to think about concrete steps. What must I do today? What can I finish this week? Fear loses its grip because your attention is anchored to action. This focus is more than mental. It changes the way you organize your life. You start waking earlier, trimming distractions, and planning your evenings with intention. Every hour gains weight and value. The television show you used to watch mindlessly now feels like a cost you can measure. You become aware of how time moves, and instead of letting it slip by, you direct it toward your goal. The ticking clock that once scared you becomes a metronome for progress, setting the pace for your efforts. There is a psychological shift that happens when a deadline is real. The body senses it. The mind senses it. You begin to experience a productive tension, the same kind of focus an athlete feels before a race or a musician before a performance. Adrenaline sharpens your senses and keeps you alert. What used to feel like fear now feels like energy. You still notice the butterflies in your stomach, but they're flying in formation. That energy is your ally, propelling you through challenges instead of paralyzing you. Consider any major accomplishment in history, and you'll find someone who set a date and honored it. Authors finish books because publishers demand manuscripts by a certain month. Engineers meet launch windows that cannot be moved. Students complete degrees because graduation is scheduled years in advance. In each case, the looming deadline transforms hesitation into focused action. People who might otherwise delay find themselves capable of extraordinary discipline simply because the finish line is visible. This doesn't mean you'll never feel fear. It means fear loses its power to dictate your choices. When the date is circled on the calendar, you can't hide behind endless preparation or the excuse of not feeling ready. You step forward, sometimes imperfectly, but always forward, and with each step, the fear that once shouted in your ear becomes a faint echo behind you. By giving your dream a deadline, you convert raw anxiety into targeted drive. The same ticking clock that once symbolized pressure becomes a partner, pushing you to focus on what matters most. You stop waiting for courage and start building it through action. That is the quiet magic of a deadline. It doesn't erase fear, it redirects it, transforming nervous energy into a laser-sharp focus that carries you to the goal you once only dared to imagine. Success loves a schedule, because every meaningful achievement, whether it's building a business, writing a book, completing a degree, or transforming your health, depends on structure and timing. Imagine someone setting out to climb a mountain without deciding when to start, when to reach each checkpoint, or when to summit. They might have the best equipment and the strongest desire, but without a schedule, their climb is left to chance. A deadline is the heartbeat of progress. It's a silent partner that keeps you moving forward when excitement fades and distractions appear. A schedule forces clarity. When you decide when something must be finished, you naturally begin to outline how it will happen. Suddenly, vague goals like, I want to be fit, become concrete actions, such as, I will run 3 times a week so that I can complete a 5K by October 1st. The date on the calendar acts like a compass, pointing you towards specific daily habits. Without that compass, it's easy to drift, to postpone, to say tomorrow until months disappear. The beauty of a schedule is that it transforms big dreams into small, manageable steps. If your dream is to launch a business in a year, that single deadline breaks down into quarters, months, weeks, and days of action. Each step has its own mini deadline. Research the market this week. Finalize the business plan by next month. Secure funding by the following quarter. Each small finish line builds momentum and confidence. Before long, the impossible feels inevitable. Schedules also bring accountability. When you declare a date, whether to yourself, a mentor, or the public, you create an internal contract. That commitment keeps you on track even when motivation dips. It's easy to skip a task when no one is watching and no clock is ticking. But when a deadline is visible and real, you feel the weight of commitment. It isn't about fear, it's about respect for your own word. Another quiet power of a schedule is that it teaches you to adapt. Life rarely unfolds exactly as planned. Deadlines don't eliminate obstacles, they highlight them early so you can adjust. If you realize you're falling behind halfway through, the schedule shows you where to pivot, where to double your effort, or which task can be streamlined. Instead of drifting off course, you stay engaged with reality and keep moving toward the goal. Success loves a schedule because time is the one resource you cannot replace. Money can be earned back, energy can be renewed, but lost time is gone forever. When you assign time to your dream, you honor its importance. You tell yourself and the world that this goal deserves space on the calendar, not just in your imagination. That mindset separates achievers from dreamers. Finally, a schedule turns success from an accident into a pattern. People who consistently reach their goals are not luckier or more talented, they are better schedulers. They know that every achievement lives inside a framework of dates and discipline. By giving your dream a clear beginning and a defined end, you create the same framework. The schedule doesn't just serve your goal, it shapes you into someone who finishes what they start. And that, more than the dream itself, is the true mark of success.